Alright gang, so here's the deal. We're drawing ever closer to mounting up that ARB front bumper. We're just about there. Got the old one off. And what I want to show you is, I get asked a lot about how I did the hidden winch mount. So since I'm tearing it all apart, I thought I would show you. First thing I'm going to say about this winch is the Warren M12000 winch. It's probably, I installed this thing on here 12 years ago, and it was used. I bought that thing used for like 600 bucks from Classifieds. It's a pretty sweet deal. But the point is that M12000 Warren winch is freaking huge. It's a big winch, dude. I believe it has a 125-foot spool. So I just removed that from the system. We're going to be installing the synthetic line on this. So as far as size wise, you can see that it's a tight fit. It's a tight fit right here. But how I fashioned this up, I will have to bust out the camera after I get it dismounted, but you can see the way it's arranged. And all this is 1/4 inch steel, 4-inch angle iron, and then you got some 3/4 inch, nope, I think that's probably inch, 1 inch by 2 inch rectangular bar, some 3/4 inch round bar, and then I had to reorient the ears, whatever you want to call them, to the front to mount up as such. And other than that, it's pretty straight up, pretty straight deal. Just made these wings out here so you can mount the old bumper to it. And yeah, it's rusted to hell, but that's what happens, right? Live in a salty environment. And so if it was powder coated, that would be ideal. You can see I've got some pretty major cleanup and repainting to do on this thing before we get it installed in the ARB. So that's today and tomorrow's projects. But anyway, that's how it's mounted in there. Pretty simple. You got your 2 bolts out here. Really nothing underneath it on the outer edge. And then beneath that, I welded these straps up here as well. And then you can see these are factory holes. It was made to hold a winch in this area, just a smaller winch. So what I had to do is cut that down, box it in, reinforce it, and then you've got a place to bolt to the side blocks of the winch itself, right? And then I had to notch out that top support as well, and then I boxed that in as well with the welder back then, way back then. And it fits in there just right. There's not interfering with your radiators or anything else like that, so it's pretty freaking primo. Anybody could do that. So that's what's up with that. And then lastly, all I had to do was take a freaking Sawzall or whatever and make a space for those 2 by 1 inch rectangular sections to come out, and that right there is where the fairlead mounted onto. Pretty easy. And it also made it so you could pretty easily adjust the clutch lever, the engagement lever, right through here. A little bit tight, but that is it. That's how you do it. That's how I did it. Good luck. All right, so a couple of last thoughts. Since we really didn't address it earlier, the layout of this winch. First off, when I built this thing, I put a thread on the I Hate Mud forum. You can go back and find it. My username on there is Hawk Driver, because I used to be a Black Hawk pilot in the Army. Anyways, got a lot of feedback on that. It's a pretty good thread, a lot of opinions on it, and a lot of people that have a good amount of experience were quite concerned with the way it was mounted. And I'm sure a lot of those dudes have valid reasons for why they were concerned and have seen a bunch of horrendous things happen. So they give a lot of feedback, more or less shot it down in a lot of ways. But what was I going to do? Redesign it based on people's opinions and whatnot? No, I didn't. So pretty happy to report that 12 years later, this winch has extracted no less than 25, I'd say a good 25 people that I've pulled out of snowbanks, off the road, one form or another, and just a couple of self-extractions come to mind. So it's done phenomenally well. Another thing that I was mentioning to my buddy earlier when we were discussing this thing is that every time I've ever needed it, it's always worked. I mean, it might go unused for about a year or more, and then sure enough, man, pull out the controller, plug it in, hook up the battery to it, and every freaking time, never fails, always works. So reliability of Warn winches is pretty awesome. My only other winch experience that I have is an 8274 on the old FJ40. Anyways, I'm digressing here. Point is that it's worked great. It's never buckled, it's never flawed. And now as for how it's laid out and designed, it's kind of odd. And I was just thinking about it because I'm getting ready to mount it onto the new ARB bumper, but I think what I had to do is reverse the polarity in the controls so that it turns backwards. You can see here's where the fair lead was, and so the spool has to turn and pull it over the top instead of under the bottom. Okay, in this scenario, so that's the way that was arranged. I think that's backwards of the way it's normally set up. Usually pulls off the bottom, and if I had been able to do it off the bottom, it would have been more ideal. But that's probably one of the main concerns, is that there's no bolting in, no anchoring at the top. So there's definitely some twisting forces. If you look at it and you think about it, down there, that bolt in the back to these bolts out here, there's a pretty good leverage up here in this region. Now, granted, I've got these two bolts here that pretty much counteract all that, but the only reason I mention all this to you is that if you do it this way, you're gonna have to reverse the polarity on the motor. Shouldn't be a problem. I can't imagine that it would be a problem. You have to clock it into different orientation so that the mounting face, what should be pointing forward, is pointing in the bottom. There's those bolt holes there. And that, yeah, it's just not tied in at the top. So I never noticed any sort of straining, any sort of creaking or popping or anything weird. So I think it's pretty damn solid the way it's arranged. Do so if you choose to build one in this fashion. Do so at your own peril. So anyway, worked pretty good. That's all I got for you.